The rebellion came with fire, stone, and silence. On a single Friday night in 1511, 80 Christians died in their sleep. It should have been the end, but then he stepped out of the trees. A man the natives feared more than guns or steel. A name spoken in terror and reverence. Diego de Salazar. This is not a legend. It was written by a man who lived through it. Gonzalo Fernández de Oviedo, chronicler, soldier, and eyewitness to conquest. In the year 1510, settlers from Española arrived on the southern coast of the island they called San Juan, and the Taínos knew as Borinquén. They built a town near 5 rivers of gold, but the land turned on them. Swamps, fever, mosquitoes. As the chronicler recounts, there were so many mosquitoes that it became a significant reason for its depopulation. The survivors fled northwest and renamed their new settlement Sotomayor. But even as they fled, the Taínos spoke of a Spaniard, a swordsman who moved like a ghost and killed like a storm. His name, Salazar. According to Oviedo, it is also true that the same Diego de Salazar had already shown his experience dealing with Indians, and was so feared that when it was suspected that he was in the town of Sotomayor, though he wasn't, they avoided attacking the town out of fear. Then came Friday. Caciques across the island struck at once. Each killed the Spaniard lodged in his home. In mere hours, 80 Christians were dead. The chronicler records, each cacique killed the Christian who was in his house, so that at the same time, they killed 80 Christians or more. In Sotomayor, no one believed the warning until it was too late. But one man did not panic. He gathered the few who survived, a nobleman, a soldier, a man devoted to the Virgin Mary. Oviedo tells us, there was no one to call for help except a nobleman in that old town, named Diego de Salazar, a devoted man of the Mother of God, a very valiant and extremely brave man. He spoke only once, "If we die, let it be as men." Then they fought, and by steel, rage, and grace, they survived. As Oviedo notes, everyone who saw them said that after God, Diego de Salazar had saved their lives. The rebellion had begun, but so had the legend of Salazar, and this was only the beginning. 3 moons before the uprising at Sotomayor, a challenge was issued, masked as a ceremony. A young cacique, Ayamon, invited a Spanish noble to a game of bate. The Spaniard was Diego Suarez, son of Pedro Suarez de la Cámara, and in this game, losing meant death. He played, he won, but it changed nothing. He was marked for death. His reward, a place on a spit. Elsewhere, another story unfolded. The daughter of Cacique Guarionex had fallen for a young cacique, a guest under her father's roof. But she had been promised to someone else, to Salazar. She told the young man, "Salazar will kill you. He knows. He's coming." The girl had spoken true. "You took what was mine, and I should kill you for it. But instead, you're going to tell me something. Where they're keeping Suarez." Cornered, afraid, and half in love, the boy gave him the truth. Deep in the swamp, Diego Suarez waited for death. They tied him like a hog for slaughter. The tribe would eat his limbs once the feast was done. The chronicler writes, just in time, Diego de Salazar arrived to cut the ropes binding Suarez, saying to him, "You are a man, do as I do." 2 men against a village, but Salazar fought like the fury of heaven. They didn't stand a chance. The enemy didn't seek revenge. They sought reverence. Oviedo tells us he begged them to give him his name, and that his vassals would also bear it, and Diego Salazar said he was pleased. From that day forward, to bear the name Salazar meant immunity, respect, fear. The natives would say, "Why should I fear you? You are no Salazar." In another battle, Salazar caught an elderly woman fleeing. He gave her a letter for Governor Juan Ponce de Leon. and then released his war dog, Becerrio. The chronicler recounts, as soon as she saw the dog coming, she sat down on the ground and said, "Dog, do not hurt me. I go to deliver this to the governor." The soldiers froze. The dog had spared her. They called it a miracle. Ponce, not wanting to be outdone by the dog, set her free. Deep in the mountains, ambushes were laid on every road. 1,000 warriors waited. Who do you send when everyone else would die? Diego de Salazar. Oviedo notes he was valiant and resolute, enduring all the hardships of war better than many young men. He didn't just break the ambush, he slaughtered it. As the chronicler writes, 50 to 60 Indians were killed. Not one Christian died, though many were wounded. He survived battles, outlived rebellions, was feared by thousands. But his end did not come by sword or ambush. They said he died from bubas, the disease that ate men from within. Not on the battlefield, not in the arms of warriors, but slowly, quietly, the man called Salazar faded from history. He died a captain, a Christian, a name whispered in terror by those who once ruled the island. Then, silence. The name Salazar all but vanished. No records of children, no estate, no widow, just the legend. But another name appears in the same places in the same years. A soldier, a settler, a man with children, a man whose descendants would use the name Guilarte de Salazar. And here's the thing, they're never in the same place, never in the same document. One appears, then disappears, just as the other emerges. What if they were the same man, wearing two faces? Salazar was the warrior, the conqueror, the one Oviedo recorded in blood and ash. Guilarte was the man, the settler, the father. Salazar was the mask, Guilarte was the man behind it. And just like Batman and Bruce Wayne, they were one and the same. This theory isn't folklore. It comes from documents, from silence, from what's said and what's not said. My name is Dairen Castro Torres, the genealogist, and after years of combing through the archives, I've uncovered something puzzling. Was Diego Salazar really Diego Guilarte? Take a second to like and subscribe, and let's dig deeper into the man who conquered Borinquén and gave birth to Puerto Rico. The chronicles end here, but the story doesn't, because what Oviedo recorded in ink, I've traced in documents. Now, we leave behind the battlefields and enter the archives, where a paper trail may prove that Salazar didn't die with his legend, but lived under a different name, Diego Guilarte, and through him, a legacy that survives to this day in Puerto Rican families. Let's examine the records. This record is from 1511, and it says, Diego Guilarte was given on this day license to travel. Diego Guilarte is the son of Sancho González Guilarte and Catalina Gómez de Lomana, residents of Frias, which is a town in northern Spain. Here we have a record from 1511, and it's about the foundation of Caparra, which was the first Spanish settlement on Puerto Rico. And you see right here, Diego Guilarte is there. A notable person that is not there is Diego de Salazar. This record is from 1513, and it's two brothers, Sancho Guilarte and Victores de Salazar, both residents of Frias, just like Diego Guilarte. And you'll notice that the brothers, one uses the name Guilarte, the other uses Salazar. Pay close attention to Victores Salazar, because you'll see him later using the name Guilarte. Here's another record from 1513, and it's Diego Guilarte unloading some goods on behalf of his brother Gonzalo. Here we have a record from 1514, and it's very important because it's from the foundation of the town of San Germán. These are men who are picking up gold and finding gold in the rivers over there. And you see right here, Diego de Salazar is one of the men. In the same record, there is no Diego Guilarte mentioned, only Diego de Salazar. Remember, 1514, the foundation of San Germán, and he's using the name Salazar. The next year, in 1515, in the same town of San Juan, you see Diego Guilarte occupying the same post that Diego de Salazar had the year prior. And on this record, there is no mention of a Diego de Salazar. In 1517, Diego Ramos, another famous conqueror, is arriving on Puerto Rico with his wife, Leonor Valera, his daughter, Leonor, and he has two other people with him, Teresa Núñez and her husband, Pedro de Avila, and their daughter, Isabel. Now, these people are important because Isabel is going to be the wife of Diego Guilarte, and Pedro de Avila and Teresa Núñez are his in-laws. In 1519, you find this record. Another time you'll see Diego de Salazar, but what I find interesting is that right here it says de la guerra, or from the war, supporting my theory that for some reason when it came to war he used the name Salazar, and for almost everything else he used the name Guilarte. This is another important record from 1522, and again they're finding gold, and you'll see Francisco Juancho, who was another famous conqueror, and Diego Guilarte. Again, on this record there is no mention of Diego de Salazar, confirming that these are the same men. In 1527, you find Diego Guilarte, and he's giving some goods to his mother-in-law on behalf of her husband, who is now deceased, Pedro de Avila. This document comes from 1530, and it's very important because it breaks down the dynamic a little bit better. And it says Diego Guilarte, a married man, and right here it mentions his brother, Victores Guilarte. Remember earlier he went by Victores de Salazar, proving that they used both names interchangeably. And right here it also mentions his mother-in-law, Teresa Núñez, proving what we already know. Also in 1530, Governor Francisco Manuel de Lando ordered a census of the population. He didn't just record people, he recorded power. Among the dozens of names, miners, carpenters, merchants, only a handful stand out for their wealth, authority, and social rank. One of them, Diego Guilarte, alcalde ordinario of San Juan. An alcalde ordinario wasn't just a title, it was the highest local authority after the governor himself. He held the power of justice and administration over the capital city, but Guillarte's influence didn't stop there. The census shows that he held 33 enslaved black men and 8 black women, by far one of the largest slaveholders on the island. This placed him among the most powerful colonists economically and socially. His influence extended further still. Other individuals in the census are listed as estancieros, criados, and vaqueros of Diego Guilarte. He commanded land, labor, and livestock. And all 4 other households in San Juan are directly tied to Guillarte's name. No other settler in the census is referred to as many times as he. But what's even more revealing is that there's no Diego Salazar in the entire 1530 census. Not among the slaveholders, not among the alcaldes, not among the settlers. Yet Salazar, if he were alive and distinct from Guilarte, should have been listed. By 1530, Puerto Rico society was small, tightly recorded, and elite status was impossible to hide. The absence is deafening. This record right here is actually 3 sources that I combined, and it has to do with Julian de Salazar, another brother of Diego Guilarte, who ends up being a conqueror of Mexico. All the way on the left, it's from 1553, and he's doing business with a man from the town of Frias, which is where they originated from. In the middle, it's the Royal Academy of History, and it shows right here, Julian de Salazar was the son of Sancho González Guilarte and Catalina Gómez de Lima, and the other record it shows de Lomana. So it proves that they are siblings. And all the way to the right, in 1562, these are the merits of Julian de Salazar. And it says right here that he was a hidalgo, a good Christian, and he comes from the old families of the Casa de Salazar, of the ancient house of Salazar, proving that Diego Guilarte de Salazar also descends from the noble house of Salazar. And right here, interestingly enough, Julian de Salazar liberated many of his Indian slaves who worked in the mines. This record is from 1565, and you see Juan Guilarte de Salazar, the first time the compound surname is used. Now, Juan Guilarte de Salazar is the only recorded son of Diego Guilarte. This record comes to us from 1582, and it's Fray Martin de Salazar, who was a priest, and he says that he's the son of Juan Guilarte de Salazar and Maria de Quesada, the grandson of Diego Guilarte and Alonso de Avila. They're both primary populators of the island. Both his grandfathers were regidors, and the families married with the Ponce de Leon family. In fact, Martin's sister Isabel married Luis Ponce de Leon, who was a great-grandson of Juan Ponce de Leon, the conqueror and first governor of Puerto Rico. There was another census done on San Juan in the year 1673, and right here you see this is the house of Doña Mencia Maldonado. Now, she is the wife of Diego Guilarte de Salazar, the grandson of Diego Guilarte, who we're referring to. And she's living in the house. Her husband is already deceased, and she's living with her children. Don Pedro Guilarte, her son, Doña Maria Guilarte, her daughter, Doña Felipa de Rivera, her daughter. You see they use different last names interchangeably. Doña Ana and Doña Juana Guilarte, her daughters. And they have 4 slaves. Also in 1673, we have Juan Guilarte de Salazar, who was a priest. And this is his merits, and you see on the right side he gives some genealogical information. He says that he is the legitimate son of Juan Guilarte de Salazar and Doña Mencia Maldonado. He is the paternal grandson of Diego Guilarte de Salazar, who was alcalde ordinario, and his wife Doña Juana de Fonseca. On the maternal side, he's the grandson of Pedro Sepúlveda Maldonado and Doña Felipa de Rivera, who we saw in the previous record, one of his sisters was named after. But he says right here that he's descended from the ancient populators of Puerto Rico. This is a marriage record in 1684 in San Juan, and Diego Guilarte de Salazar, who is an alcalde ordinario, and he's the legitimate son of Don Juan Guilarte de Salazar and Doña Mencia Maldonado, and he's marrying Ana Coronado. This document is from 1691, and it shows Pedro Guilarte de Salazar was banished from the island of Santo Domingo after repeatedly violating the governor's orders that forbid his return due to serious crimes that he previously committed. Despite prior warnings and public reprimands, he attempted to re-enter the island. Upon learning of his return, the president of Santo Domingo ordered his permanent expulsion. There are a few common errors frequently repeated in reconstructions of the Guilarte de Salazar family tree. First, this Pedro Guilarte de Salazar, the son of Juan Guilarte de Salazar and Mencia Sepúlveda Maldonado, is often incorrectly identified as the same individual as Pedro Sepúlveda Maldonado, who was a regidor of San Juan. However, contemporary documents clearly distinguish them as 2 separate men belonging to different branches. Another error that is often claimed is that Lope de Maldonado, the husband of Isabel de Leon, descends from the Guilarte de Salazar family. To date, there is no evidence that supports this, and the connection remains unproven. Both errors should be avoided in serious genealogical work. Now we return back to the 1673 census of San Juan, and this is another branch of the family. This is the house of Maria de Quesada, and she's living in the house of her son Josef, and Maria de Quesada is the wife of Diego de Perez Vasco, and she is the daughter of Diego Guilarte de Salazar and Juana de Fonseca. In 1643, Doña Maria de Quesada, the wife of Diego Perez Vasco, is baptizing her son Miguel Perez de Quesada. In 1658, Don Pedro Perez Vasco is submitting his merits, which includes some genealogical information. It says very clearly that he's the son of Diego Perez Vasco and Doña Maria de Quesada. His father is the legitimate son of Lorenzo Perez Vasco and Doña Luisa de Venegas. On his maternal side, she is the daughter of Diego Guilarte de Salazar and Doña Juana de Fonseca. Once again, we're looking at the 1673 census of San Juan, and this is the house of Angela de Leon, and she's living with two of her children, Bernalda and Maria. This is a marriage in 1694 in San Juan, Puerto Rico, between Simón Alagarín and Mariana Perez. Simón is the son of Diego Algarín and Ana Camila, and Mariana Perez is the natural daughter of Don Diego Perez Vasco and Angela de Leon. Mariana Perez, the wife of Simón Alagarín, was the natural daughter of Diego II Perez Vasco, who was born in 1633, not his father Diego I Perez Vasco, who was born closer to 1610. Mariana married in 1694, suggesting that she was born between 1670 to 1678. Diego II would have been between 36 to 45 years old at the time, ideal fatherhood age. Diego I, however, would have been in his 60s, an implausible age to father a new child, especially decades after his last known children. Finally, the historical and genealogical record leads to one conclusion. Diego de Salazar and Diego Guilarte were the same man. This is not speculation, it is supported by documented fact. His brother Victores appears in the same record using both surnames, Victores Salazar and Victores Guilarte, proving the names were used interchangeably within the same nuclear family. His brother Julian, known as Julian Salazar, and was acknowledged as a hidalgo of the ancient noble house of Salazar, confirming that the family's noble identity rested with the Salazar name. Nowhere do Diego de Salazar and Diego Guilarte appear on the same document, and yet they appear at the same time, in the same place, occupying the same social function. Diego Guilarte appears in 1511 in the foundation of Caparrá, and in the 1530 census of Governor Francisco Manuel de Lando, two foundational documents of Puerto Rican history. If Diego de Salazar was a separate and prominent conquistador, his omission from these core records would be historically inexplicable. Finally, the descendants of this man bear the surname Guilarte de Salazar, a synthesis of two identities, preserving both the noble lineage and the legacy of conquest. There is no genealogical logic, no historical consistency, and no documentary evidence that supports separating these two men. The sword of Salazar did not disappear, it changed names, and his blood survives.